So today, guys, today is the final day. Finally, Trump has officially been sentenced with no penalty in New York criminal trial. Guys, you cannot make this up. I have for you the complete recording of what Trump said. I have for you the complete recording of what Judge Merchan said during the sentencing. These are very hard to find across the internet, but I was able to get them for you. We're going to listen to those in just a moment, but he has officially been sentenced, officially now considered a convicted criminal by those on the left, even though there was no charge, no fees, no fines, no jail time whatsoever. First time in history, Trump will be facing, this horrible sentence of nothing. Judge Merchan said after careful analysis, this court determined that the only lawful sentence that permits entry of judgment of conviction is an unconditional discharge. So literally all that money, all that time for nothing. The Supreme Court ruled that he had immunity and the case should have stopped. And now they're going to appeal it. Judge Merchan, like I said, I have the audio. I have the all the audio from Judge Merchan himself and from Trump so that you can hear what was said in the courtroom. It's hard to find out there, guys, but I got it for you. So we're going to listen to that in just a moment. Also, we have it where Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, is really fighting the media out. He literally laid them out and against their media bias against Trump, because right now it's Trump's fault for all the California wildfires. Figure that. We also have, guys, this is a big one. Official legislation has been brought forth to abolish federal income taxes, payroll taxes, estate taxes, and gift taxes, and replace them with a national consumption tax on new goods and services. We also have Trump has unveiled on day one, he's going to tell us about those drones that were over New Jersey. He's going to unleash over 100 executive orders. He's going to release the JFK files, the Epstein files. He said transparency is coming back to the United States. But guys, we got the official recordings of Judge Merchan and Trump that we're about to hear in just a moment. I want to say thank you to everybody that's watching. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button so I can take care of you every day with the top news. And if you don't mind, click the thumbs up like button, guys. It really does help the channel so much. Thank you to all of our members of the channel. Y'all are the best on YouTube, guys. I love y'all so much. If you want to be a member, the link is in the description to join. And thank you so much to everybody that gives a super chat donation. Becky Gavon, we appreciate you so much. Guys, we're going to jump right into this. I want to jump into the actual news of what's going through because a lot of people are very upset, and then we're going to go into the recordings in just a moment. Check this out. Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
She was our Fox person right there in the courtroom. She saw everything. Carrie, your thoughts as we wrap up the sentencing portion, but we await to hear what you heard in the courtroom.
Yes, we heard from the lead prosecutor, Joshua Steinglass. We heard from Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's attorney, who is set to become the #2 official at the Department of Justice in just about a week from now. We heard from Donald Trump himself, and then, of course, we heard from Judge Juan Merchan. Donald Trump, I thought, gave a pretty effective statement where he said, quite simply, I was indicted because my accountant labeled legal expenses, and that's why I'm here. He said this person could have labeled them concrete or electrical or anything like that. They didn't. They were legal expenses because they were payments to a lawyer. They were logged as such, and now I've been indicted. He also talked about Michael Cohen. He said how he was a disbarred attorney, but yet he was allowed to speak as if he was George Washington. He pointed out from the screen that he was speaking from, he saw into the courtroom, and he could see Matthew Colangelo, who used to be a top senior official at the Biden Department of Justice, who left that spot, took a pretty big career downgrade to go join Alvin Bragg and prosecute Donald Trump. He pointed him out and said, this is evidence that the Department of Justice was involved. That was his perspective. And then he said, and I thought this was a very effective line, he said, speaking to Judge Merchan, he said, people watched the trial in your courtroom and the people voted decisively. I won all 7 swing states. And, as he was saying that, I was thinking about, as I walked into the courtroom, that the only protesters, per se, who were here were Trump supporters. And even as I'm standing here right now, I'm looking into a square and I'm looking at people holding Trump flags. I'm looking at a person who has a sign that says, "Enough is enough. We voted. We don't want this lawfare anymore." And I will note on the audio playback that we're about to get from the court, and so everyone will be able to hear for themselves, it is noteworthy that during the trial, there was no audio, there were no cameras, but for this particular sentencing, Judge Merchan agreed to have audio. I can't help but think it's because he wants the world to hear his voice sentence Donald Trump, because we were not able to have that before. But this is how these things go.
So, Kerry, let me ask you this question. So you were there as Donald Trump made his statement to the court. He's been under a gag order for these many months, which he continues to say does not allow him to say the things that he wants to say, but he appeared to say a few of the things that he's been hanging on to in the court. How did his statement to the court strike you?
You know, it was pretty tempered. He was making actually a very effective, reasonable legal argument the entire time. He did mention the gag order, and he offhandedly said, "I'm probably still under it right now." Joshua Steinglass, the prosecutor for the DA's office, his tone was different than Donald Trump's. He was dramatic. He was a bit over the top. He included what I thought were a lot of gratuitous details, very, very critical of Donald Trump, very critical of his role in this country and how he handled himself. I thought it was a bit disconnected from reality in terms of what just happened a few weeks ago, 2 months ago with the election, and thought it was a bit unnecessary. Now, Judge Merchan, typically a soft-spoken person, and he continued to be so today. He talked about how much he thought through this decision. He defended his rejection of the immunity argument, also defended the unconditional discharge, and at the end, he wished Donald Trump Godspeed.
Guys, so let me tell you this. How do you defend that that you didn't want to just throw the case away, but then you're also going to defend discharging it without any fines or anything like that? So I've got for you guys the actual recording of Trump in the courtroom and what he said as they were about to sentence him. Listen to this.
And the people of our country got to see this firsthand because they watched the case in your courtroom. They got to see this firsthand, and then they voted, and I won and got the largest number of votes by far of any Republican candidate in history, and won, as you know, all 7 swing states, won conclusively all 7 swing states, and won the popular vote by millions and millions of votes. And they've been watching your trial, so they understood it. I wasn't allowed to use the lawyer-client privilege or the reliance on counsel. I had a lawyer that made this deal, and he admitted that. And he was also a totally discredited person. We weren't allowed to use the information from the Southern District that totally discredited him. It wasn't allowed to be put in. And that was terrible, unbelievable. And this is a man who's got no standing. He's been disbarred on other matters, unrelated. And he was allowed to talk as though he were George Washington. But he's not George Washington. He shouldn't have been allowed. The Southern District did a book of approximately 28 pages where I've never seen anything like it. They excoriated him. You wouldn't let it be put into evidence. So he was able to testify as a witness, and I think it's a disgrace to the system. I was under a gag order. I'm the first president in history that was under a gag order where I couldn't talk about aspects of the case that are very important. I guess I'm still under, so probably I won't do it now. I assume I'm still under a gag order. But the fact is that I'm totally innocent. I did nothing wrong. They talked about business records, and the business records were extremely accurately counted. I had nothing to do with them. That was done by an accountant or a bookkeeper who I think gave very credible testimony and was corroborated by everybody that was asked. And with all that's happening in our country today, with a city that's burning to the ground, one of our largest, most important cities burning to the ground, with wars that are uncontrollably going on, with all of the problems of inflation and attacks on countries and all of the horrible things that are going on. I got indicted over calling a legal expense a legal expense. It was called a legal expense. I just want to say I think it's an embarrassment to New York, and New York has a lot of problems, but this is a great embarrassment. I believe that this and other cases that were brought, as you know, the DOJ is very much involved in this case. It's because that's the political opponent they're talking about. The DOJ is very involved. You have a gentleman sitting right there from the DOJ who was from the DOJ's office. He was also involved with the New York State Attorney General's case. And he went from there to here. He went around and did what he had to do. He got them to move on me. But in the meantime, I won the election in a massive landslide. And the people of this country understand what's gone on. This has been a weaponization of government. They call it lawfare. Never happened to any extent like this, but never happened in our country before. And I'd just like to explain that I was treated very, very unfairly. And I thank you very much.
Alrighty, guys. So that was Trump speaking in the courtroom. Now I have the actual sentencing audio that you can hear Judge Juan Merchan go through the whole the sentencing, why he sentenced this, so that you can hear it. The guys, this is hard. This was hard to find, but listen to this.
You once occupied, and which you will soon occupy again. To be sure, it is the legal protections afforded to the office of the President of the United States that are extraordinary, not the occupant of the office. The legal protections, especially within the context of a criminal prosecution, afforded to the office of the President have been laid out by our founders, the Constitution, and most recently interpreted by the United States Supreme Court in the matter of Trump versus the United States, which was decided on July 1st, 2024. As with every other defendant in your position, it is my obligation to consider any and all aggravating and mitigating factors to inform my decision. Some of those aggravating factors have already been articulated in my Sandoval ruling at the start of this trial and by my recent written decisions on December 16th and January 3rd. Thus, they need not be repeated at this time. However, the considerable, indeed, extraordinary legal protections afforded by the office of the Chief Executive is a factor that overrides all others. Yes. To be clear, the protections afforded the office of the President are not a mitigating factor. They do not reduce the seriousness of the crime or justify its commission in any way. The protections are, however, a legal mandate, which, pursuant to the rule of law, this court must respect and follow. However, despite the extraordinary breadth of those protections, one power they do not provide is the power to erase a jury verdict. It is clear from legal precedent, which until July 1st was scarce, that Donald Trump, the ordinary citizen, Donald Trump, the criminal defendant, would not be entitled to such considerable protections. I'm referring to protections that extend well beyond those afforded the average defendant who winds their way through the criminal justice system each day. No, ordinary citizens do not receive those legal protections. It is the office of the President that bestows those far-reaching protections to the office holder. And it was the citizenry of this nation that recently decided that you should once again receive the benefits of those protections, which include, among other things, the Supremacy Clause and presidential immunity. It is through that lens and that reality that this court must determine a lawful sentence.
A lawful sentence.
After careful analysis, in obedience to governing mandates, and pursuant to the rule of law, this court has determined that the only lawful sentence that permits entry of a judgment of conviction without encroaching upon the highest office in the land is an unconditional discharge, which the New York State Legislature has determined is a lawful and permissible sentence for the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree. Therefore, at this time, I impose that sentence to cover all 34 counts. Sir, I wish you Godspeed as you assume your second term in office.
All righty, guys, there it was. That was Judge Juan Merchan, who just gave the sentencing to Trump, who literally, guys, he literally contradicts himself that says, look, you know, as president, you got immunity, but I still got to give you a sentence, and, you know, immunity protects you. It goes above everything, but I still got to give you a sentence, and the sentence is there's nothing. It's unconditional, and, you know, no fines, no fees, no jail time, no prison, no nothing. Why didn't they just dismiss the dang case? They wanted to be able, because now that he's been sentenced, even though with nothing, unconditional discharge, he is still now technically a convicted felon. George Soto, this is his response. We're going to read it in just a moment. But George Soto, thank you so much for the super chat. Let's go. First time. Hello. He said, hello, everyone. And thank you so much, Jeff Stark, for the super chat. He said, just let Trump run this country. Let him do his job with no interference. Fetterman said it's right. Let's get along. Thanks, Joel. Hey, thanks, Jeff and George. Y'all show them some love in the chat. So Trump says the radical Democrats have lost another pathetic, un-American witch hunt. After spending tens of millions of dollars, that's what Trump spent on legal fees. And I'll say this, legal fees are literally, they call our country fair. Like, I'll tell you this, get in a court case with a company that's got millions of dollars and you're going to lose most of the time. Get in a court case where you can't afford to hire a good lawyer and you're going to lose. Only reason Trump was able to hold himself is he's got tens of millions of dollars to spend. The average American doesn't have that, and that's why the average American gets screwed over in the court system. After spending tens of millions of dollars wasting over 6 years of obsessive work that should have been spent on protecting New Yorkers from violent, rampant crime that is destroying the city and state, coordinating with the Biden-Harris Department of Injustice and Lawless Weaponization, and bringing completely baseless, illegal, and fake charges against your 45th and 47th president, I was given an I like how he puts that. I was given an unconditional discharge. That result alone proves that, as all legal scholars and experts have said, there is no case, there was never a case, and this whole scam fully deserves to be dismissed. The real jury, the American people, have spoken. They're re-electing me with an overwhelming mandate in one of the most consequential elections in history. As the American people have seen, this case has no crime, no damages, no proof, no facts, no law, only a highly conflicted judge, a star witness who is a disbarred disgrace, serial perjurer, and criminal election interference. Today's event was a despicable charade, and now that it is over, we will appeal this hoax, which has no merit, and restore the trust of Americans in our once great system of justice. Make America great again. So, guys, they're still going to appeal it. They said that this case is chock full of holes, that they're going to win an appeal. But remember what they said. They have not allowed any recording, any video whatsoever of the case this entire time. But they wanted to allow it on the last day whenever they wanted. Judge Merchan wanted to be able to have it recorded where he sentenced Trump. Listen to this.
Let me get to the first component of what I want to talk to you about today that's critical right here regarding the fake crime, fake sentencing in front of the fake judge, in front of the fake court system, in front of a fake prosecutor and everything else up in New York with Judge Merchan. Donald Trump was just sentenced. The left is now celebrating and can call him a convicted felon. We, of course, will use that to raise money and influence to hopefully win back the midterms, just like we did the outlaw label last time. Because we're good at that. Because we're good at that. We're good at flipping the script on quad liberal commies because we beat their... We've won the last 3 elections. I thought just 2. We won 3. Number one, liberals are celebrating today, not because of the verdict. They're going to, publicly, yes, you're going to see the Jessica Tarloffs and, the other Karens and liberal losers. You're going to see them like the Ken Delaney and the CIA mop-up man taking a victory lap. But I'm telling you something. I need you to digest this and internalize this because it's true. Even the loser class, the Ken Delanians of the world, they know this was a mistake.
Yep.
Now, they can't publicly tweet out and say something like, well, you know what? We're glad this thing is over. Let's move on. Because what'll happen is the liberal commies that follow them on Twitter will attack them and be like, we got Hitler. Do you understand that? But the smart commies, they're still evil, but they're tactically smart. They know this was a huge mistake. However, they still think it was a success. Dan, what are you saying? This is confusing. You're all over the place. No, I'm not. They know that the convicted felon thing is only going to add to Donald Trump's martyrdom and his legend moving forward. They know that. But they also understand, due to this New York Times article here, Supreme Court denies Trump's last-ditch effort to avoid sentencing. They know they've won because process is punishment to the left. Everybody, let's take a break, okay? Judge Bongino has ruled. Deep breaths. Let's refocus. Because if we don't learn from this educational entertainment, Hat Tip Boogie Down Productions, there is no purpose to this show whatsoever. My good friend Tom Fitton over at Judicial Watch told me this a long time ago. Judicial Watch, I mean, that's what they do. They watch the judiciary. That's why they're called Judicial Watch. Sorry, that sounded like a dick on that one? No, it wasn't intentional, I promise. Tom said process for the left is punishment. The left doesn't really care that he's labeled a convicted felon. They know it's going to backfire. I just said that. What they care about is they have successfully forced Donald Trump to defend himself against a fake crime in front of a fake judge with a daughter who was a Democrat activist. The judge, I believe, is a donor, in front of a fake DA, in front of a fake AG. This is what their goal was. Their goal is to make the process so painful that the outcome doesn't matter. Do you understand what I mean? This is why liberals love things like the IRS. They love things like a weaponized FBI, because they know in the end that if they come knocking down your door because you're a Trump activist with an FBI search warrant, even if the search warrant is based on a source they know to be giving them fake information, they know later on nothing will happen to them. They'll just say, hey, how did we know Christopher Steele was lying? They'll know that, but they'll know that and they'll admit to it later after you've spent $200,000 to $300,000 in legal bills.
Legal, guys, I'm telling you.
I'm not going to lie to you, folks. This is a messaging narrative loss for them. The convicted felon thing is a total loser for them. It is only going to add to Trump's aura. Does everybody get that in the chat? Tell me in the chat you're digging what I'm putting down. You're picking up and eating this chili, because you got to understand it. The narrative war for them is completely lost. They lost the election. However, the damage done to constitutional process across the country is maybe at this point, I'm not going to say irreparable, but it's going to be difficult to fix. If they can do this to Donald Trump, the most powerful Republican, conservative, anywhere in the world, if they can do this to him and drag him through this kangaroo court in New York on a fake crime with no victim, they can do it to anyone. And whereas Donald Trump won't be bankrupted by this, I promise, you will.
Yep.
Our Supreme Court, throw that up again. Our Supreme Court is totally, I don't want to say our Supreme Court. Clarence Thomas and Alito, of course, always do the right thing. Ladies and gentlemen, Amy Coney Barrett has been a total failure. She has been a total failure. I love Donald Trump, but whoever recommended, I believe it was the Federalist Society, recommended Amy Coney Barrett. She has been an absolute disaster. Amy Coney Barrett is John Roberts Jr. John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett sided with the liberal commies. Now, I expect nothing from John Roberts. He's a clown. John Roberts is a judicial left-wing activist. He is not a conservative. That's why I laugh, and you should never say, folks in the chat, you understand this? If you ever say this in the chat, we may consider banning you. I can't, we don't have a 6-3 Supreme Court.
No.
John Roberts is a leftist, period. John Roberts has done more to destroy the country. His ruling on Obamacare, his ruling on the census and illegal immigration, his ruling on this. John Roberts is a not just a leftist, a hardcore leftist. Amy Coney Barrett is John Roberts Jr. She has been a disastrous pick Trump should haul in every single person who recommended her and demand an explanation why. The Supreme Court has, now, whether they, I need you to understand, because a lot of you in the chat, I know what you're going to say. So here, Scraw F says, reform the judicial system. Yeah, you're damn right. But I want you guys to understand. A couple people in the chat, I'll bet you're thinking this. Well, you know, the Supreme Court didn't totally reject it. They said, let the process play out first, and then we'll take it afterwards. That's the point. That's what the left wanted. Do you understand? The left wanted the Supreme Court to say, hey, weaponize the system all you want, and then when everybody's bankrupt, we'll come in later and clean up the mess when the guy's already bankrupt. That's not justice, folks. I mean, have you not heard the cliche, justice delayed is justice denied?
Yep.
Donald Trump, it's not just justice delayed, it's justice never. The Supreme Court had an opportunity to step up and shut this down, and outside of Clarence Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch, these other, Amy Coney Barrett and Roberts, have now turned into devout leftists. This is what happens when you hire legal professors with no legal experience whatsoever. I mean, excuse me, with no real world experience to go out and be the most important jurors in the land. Process is punishment, folks. Then you have this at Fox News. Our court system is completely collapsed. The whole purpose of the blind justice court system we aspire to is that every single American, if it's Donald Trump or Trump Donald, gets the exact same opportunity at a fair legal justice system that protects due process rights. Donald Trump, this whole case for Jack Smith was thrown out. The appeals court is still going to let Jack Smith release this report on a case with no merit whatsoever, with an unconstitutional appointment of Jack Smith that was thrown out. You have no protection if you're a Republican anymore. None. Zero. Absolute disgrace.
Guys, let me tell you this. There's so much backward stuff that's happening now. Why would you sentence somebody with an unconditional discharge with no fees, no jail time, nothing? Why didn't you just dismiss the case? This Supreme Court denied Trump's attempt to stop the sentence. He tried. But what's crazy is that how can the Supreme Court say you have immunity, unconditional immunity, but then you're allowed to be sentenced? Guys, it's because there was politics being played within the Supreme Court. When things get brought up at different times, it's all up to their discretion. Listen to this. And real quick, I want to give some shout outs. GL Palfreyman, thank you so much for your support. Becky Gavon, appreciate you so much. And thank you so much. Let me get George Soto. Welcome to the fam. Let's go. Y'all show them some love in the chat.
All they're trying to do is smear him. He can't. He's, acts as everybody. He's the power he's got today from his own efforts, his own moral courage, and the war room posse having his back is unprecedented in modern political history. But doesn't the Supreme Court understand what they've basically validated or positively sanctioned as a normal course of business, sir?
Yeah, apparently with the Supreme Court, a president is immune from criminal prosecution, but he's not immune from criminal sentencing 10 days before he becomes the president of the United States. I really think the Chief Justice and Justice Amy Coney Barrett thought they were being cute and political here, and all they've done is created a disaster. They've created a lot of anger in America. You're seeing the outrage right now online, and the Chief Justice thinks it's his job to protect the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, and I think he caused a lot of damage to the Supreme Court's legitimacy by his cute political little ruling. I would say to Justice Amy Coney Barrett, it's time for you to get your head out of your... You are a rattled law professor and you're embarrassing yourself.
I know you have too much class to say this, Mike, but she's got to go. She's got to step down. But we'll get to war room, focus on that. I just want to make sure the argument. Didn't she say, in her opinion, or part of the thing, that, well, Marshawn said he's not going to send him to prison, so this is going to be, he's going to be released unconditionally. Wasn't that what they leaned on? But that's kind of irrelevant, isn't it? It's because Marshawn could have changed his mind at the last second, but it's still the symbolic nature of this, correct?
That's exactly right. It's presidential immunity. Julie was talking about this. The smartest non-lawyer I know, smartest lawyer, non-lawyer I know is Julie Kelly. She said that when you assert immunity, the case has to stop, right? And that includes obviously criminal sentencing. If you are immune from criminal prosecution, you can't be criminally sentenced unless, it's Amy Coney Barrett and, she's at home knitting or whatever the hell she does late at night. She can't get her head out of her and understand that criminal sentencing is the worst part of criminal prosecution. So if you're immune from criminal prosecution, you're obviously immune from criminal sentencing. But, we put a 15-part test that, some wackadoodle like Justice Kennedy would be proud of last night, that, it's okay because world trash Marxist judge, we import it from the Cali, the Cali cartel in Colombia. We're going to trust that he's going to do the right thing.
And guys, let me tell you this. This is stupid, bad news, guys. I know we're dealing with this of Judge Merchan sentencing him unconditional discharge with no penalties or prison time. But I want to show you that there's stuff happening behind the scenes, guys. We got who is going to be in charge of the national intelligence of the United States. Who's Trump's appointee? Tulsi Gabbard. Well, guess what? There's things happening behind the scenes. Her and remember, who's going to be the Attorney General? Pam Bondi. Guys, they're working on stuff already that is going to be able to get this stupid lawfare out. Check this out.
How did it go today? Thank y'all for coming. Very good. She's got my support 110%. One of the most important positions that President Trump's going to have under him in terms of getting our country back straight. And there's 4 or 5 people that I've met with that she will be working with. It's a good time to know that we're going to have people that's actually going to be for the United States of America and the citizens of America. One thing that we discussed was trust. Trust is what we have to have in this country for our people, the people that pay the taxes, the citizens of this country can understand we trust the people that's running the United States of America, especially our intel agency. So I'm 100% for Tulsi. She's going to be great and look forward to her taking over in the very near future and going from there. And we're going to work with her very hard.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Okay, thank you.
Great to see you. Thank you for your time and for your support. As we talked about, there are a number of serious national security threats that our country faces, and it's important that we all stand together to put the interests of the safety, security, and freedom of the American people first. So I'm grateful for your support and
Thank you.
Looking forward to continuing to meet with your colleagues over the next week or two.
Are you planning on meeting with further Democrats beyond, obviously, Senator Warner over the next week or two as well?
Yes, we've extended invitations to, obviously, all the Democrats on the committee and others not on the committee, and I look forward to meeting with all who choose to accept the invite.
When was the last time you spoke to the president-elect, and what has he told you about his priorities, if you're confirmed, as far as regaining that trust, of the intel community specifically?
I spoke to him yesterday, and he has made very clear, both himself as well as through his national security advisor and others, his priorities. Right now I'm focused on continuing to meet with senators, address any questions or concerns that they have, and talk about the interests of our country and how we look forward to being able to work together.
Have any Democrats indicated they're going to support you?
I won't speak for any senators.
Have they told you that?
I won't speak for any senators. I will allow them to make their own statements on their own account.
Have you heard concerns about experience within the intel sphere itself? We've heard concerns, like that from other senators. I'm just wondering if you've heard those things with your meetings from Democrats or others.
I don't want to disclose the contents of our conversations. My background on the Armed Services Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committees in Congress over 8 years, service in the military now for over 22 years, gives me a lot of the insight necessary to be able to go in and understand the serious threats we face and the essential function of our intelligence community to restore that trust and to get after ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people.
How we really
Thank you, line who have criticized your stance.
Guys, let me tell you this. Not only are they working behind the scenes, I want to show you this too, because these are going to be two very powerful women who are coming in to work with Trump to clean house. This is Pam Bondi, who's going to be the new AG.
We've been rewriting it, and we are going to bring in something called the Gun Violence Restraining Order. So if someone is civilly committed, typically you can hold them for up to 72 hours, but people are getting out within 24 hours, the majority of them. So what we want to do is let law enforcement come in and take the guns.
Good.
They're a danger to themselves.
Which you can't
or
do
others.
right now.
Well, because without being adjudicated. So because they're a danger to themselves.
You want them to take the guns and
when they are
not go
committed.
through 6 months of legal trials and everything
Exactly.
else.
But we also have to give the mentally ill the due process in which they deserve, President. So what we're doing is they're going to be able to take the guns when they're taken into custody or into the hospital. And then when they're released, within 24 hours or 72 hours later, typically it's 24 hours, but law enforcement will have 72 hours to determine whether they should give those guns back, or they can go to a judge and say, Your Honor, please keep these guns. We feel this person is still a danger to himself or others, whether
So
they're
this
in or
would
out
not
of
have
custody.
worked the way it's currently constituted. This would not have worked with Cruz as it's currently constituted.
As it's currently written.
So you're going to make changes?
We're going to make changes.
Guys, look, again, I told you, they're ready to make changes, ready to put some things in place and get things done. I want to say thank you so much, John Reppy, for the super chat. Let's go. He said, God bless America. Thank you, Joel, for what you do for us common sense patriots. Let's go. Y'all show John some love in the chat. Guys, I'm telling you, a lot of people, across the board, everybody's done with it. Everybody's like, you know what? We're tired of the fake news. We're tired of the media. We're tired of all the lawfare. And we got our boy, Ron DeSantis in Florida, who's stepping it up. Listen to this. You're going to love this.
It's not appropriate for the president-elect or a president to be criticizing.
Is it appropriate for people in your industry to try to create division and to try to create narratives anytime these things happen? Now, you're not as interested in doing that because Newsom is a D. If Newsom was a Republican, you guys would you would have him nailed to the wall for what they're doing over there. And I know we've dealt with it. We just assume in Florida, anytime something happens, it's going to be politicized by the media. So you guys sitting in judgment of Donald Trump, I mean, excuse me, I think your track record of politicizing these things is very, very bad.
Okay, last question.
Newsom should resign and that the wildfires are all his fault. So do you agree with those comments?
I remember when we had the Surfside Tower collapse, I had people from the Washington Post trying to blame me for it immediately without having any facts or anything. Oh, he didn't declare a state of emergency. First of all, state of emergency doesn't mean you can't respond. It's all that. Excuse me?
Biden did it. I think that's what she said.
Well, but what I'm telling you is you guys are trying to make an issue of it when I have watched from this seat. In fact, when I got elected governor, I was meeting with some of the other Republican governors, and what they would say is, hey, if you have a natural disaster, just know media's coming at you, they're going to do it. It's not the same. That mayor of LA, if that were a Republican mayor, I could only imagine what that would do. I mean, you know the fires are at high risk, and you try to go to Africa or wherever she was to go on some type of voyage. You should have been there preparing and doing that, and yet I don't see a lot of heat being directed in that thing. And so, I'd like to see some balance on how this is done. You can criticize the president-elect, but I think you also have to hold these other people accountable, and I have not seen that.
Guys, they're calling them out now, and I love it. We need more people fighting the fake news like Trump did back in 2017, 2018, 2019, and so on. And now we need more people to do it. That's the only way they're going to change. Because if not, they're going to continue doing all these things of just 100% just bringing propaganda against American people. And I'm telling you, We cannot allow it to happen. I wanted to show you this because some legal experts are now chiming in on what's happened with the Trump sentencing. Again, how in the world can you say he has immunity, but then at the same time actually sentence him? It makes no sense. Listen to this.
And we have just heard that apparently Trump is finished speaking and that Merchan, the Judge Merchan, is starting the sentencing right now.
And in wrapping up, Trump said that this is a great embarrassment to the state of New York. And then Jonathan pointed out this idea that Michael Colangelo left his position as a deputy or assistant attorney general at the Department of Justice to take on the mantle of a humble state prosecutor for this case. I mean, that was something that a lot of people said, well, that draws a direct connection between what's going on in New York City and what's going on at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. What do you think?
Well, it is interesting that in these final remarks, Trump is opening up about many of these issues. He's raised some of these themes before, but he was also under a gag order, something that many of us felt was excessive. You had this acting New York justice in Manhattan effectively controlling the leading candidate for the presidency on a subject that was important to many voters. Many voters saw what Merchan did in his courtroom as raw lawfare and saw these types of cross-pollination that you just raised, John, as evidence of that. And I think that, in my view, that's the verdict that is going to be unassailable here. I don't think this case is likely to be upheld. I hope it will not be. But I think that the verdict on the New York court system is going to really stand the test of time. This was where the New York court system failed in a spectacular fashion, allowed people like Bragg, Attorney General James, and others to weaponize their system. It's going to take years for New York to regain a sense of legitimacy in the eyes of many citizens, including many business people who look at this and say, but for the grace of God, go I. But the one thing that I think that Trump can take some solace in is that he can now appeal this case in whole. And as Andy was talking about, there are some just glaring, in my views, reversible errors. I agree with Andy that the one that takes my breath away, even beyond the fact that I think this is a made-up criminal case with a made-up crime, is that the judge did not require the jury to unanimously agree on what happened. That is, in order to zap that dead misdemeanor into life, they needed this secondary crime. What was Trump trying to hide? What was he trying to achieve? Merchan just said, come up with anything. It doesn't matter. You just choose on this menu, and you don't even have to tell us what you actually think happened in this case. That should be outrageous to everyone, including critics. And, I have to give credit to, over at CNN, their senior analyst said this was unprecedented, absurd. The New York senator from New Jersey recently used stronger language to condemn this case. Those are voices from the left that I want to give credit to. But where the silence, the deafening silence, is coming from the New York legal system itself. And that's where I think many of us are rather shocked that we ever got to this point to see this sentence come down in a case that should never have been brought.
Andy, Todd Blanche is the defense attorney with Trump today. He's going to be starting at the Justice Department on January 20th. Right. That is not a Senate confirmed position, right?
No, it is.
No, it is. So he'll have to be Senate confirmed. So he's probably not going to talk too much outside of this until then. But can you project a little bit ahead? I mean, if they're saying what they're saying about the New York system and also about the overall court proceedings in America and people not having confidence, what can or should or do you anticipate Todd Blanche, Pam Bondi might do there?
Well, I think the first flashpoint, Dana, and Trey and I talked about this before we came in, is probably the Mangione case, the terrible homicide case that we had in New York. Very interestingly, not to get too much into the weeds about this, but in most of the country, there's no problem if the state prosecutes someone having a separate federal prosecution because of what we call dual sovereignty. But in New York, it doesn't work that way. In New York, they have what they call equitable double jeopardy. in the state constitution. And as a practical matter, what that always meant when I was a federal prosecutor here, we could always win the turf battles, because if we go first, the state can't go at all. They're basically jeopardied out, as we used to say. So I thought it was interesting that the Biden Justice Department evidently made a deal with Bragg that New York could go first on Mangione, and then the feds would go. I would be very surprised if the Trump Justice Department feels like they have to honor that deal.
All right. Anything on that, Trey?
I hate to use the word collusion, but Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, Kash Patel, if they're all confirmed, will find out whether or not there was collusion between Merrick Garland and Alvin Bragg to bring this case in state court. They'll have all the paperwork, all the paper trail. So if there was collusion, we'll know about it in about 3 months.
All right, so more notes from inside the court from our Kerry Urban. Judge Merchan, in his preamble to announcing the sentence, says the Trump trial was no different than all of the other criminal trials in the building. Merchan attempting to create equivalency between Trump and ordinary criminals while acknowledging the fact that he won the presidency and how it is, in fact, different. Andy, you want to tackle that one, that the Trump case is no different than any other case that comes into his courtroom?
Well, I think the Trump case is different because the defendant is in the courtroom. In Alvin Bragg's New York, that doesn't often happen. We have criminals who commit very serious crimes here who never actually get charged and never find their way into the courtroom. When they get into one of Alvin Bragg's courtrooms, if they start out with a felony, if it gets down to a misdemeanor, that's actually lucky for the public. Very often, there's not even misdemeanor dispositions. I just think it's like living in an alternative universe, listening to these guys. If you actually spend time in New York, if you grew up in New York like I did, and you saw the plummeting of crime from the 90s for the 25 years after that, which was accomplished by actual prosecution of cases, and then you have a district attorney who comes in with what he called a day one memo, which basically said there's a new regime in town, and what we're going to try as prosecutors is non-prosecution. And that's pretty much what criminals get in New York, unless their name is Donald Trump.
Wow. I wanted to ask you about something, Trey, which is the amount of taxpayer dollars that has gone forward in this prosecution, plus all of the legal costs for the defendant, who is the president-elect.
And all the other cases that were not able to be brought to trial because they wasted time on this one. All the sex assault victims, the robbery victims. Court time is precious. It is a precious resource. To waste this time on a case where even the prosecution agrees you should not spend a minute. So if Juan Merchan says this case was not handled any differently, that just tells me there are lots of bad trials going on in New York. One other point on appeal, when I was in the courtroom, the expert, Trump's expert, was not even allowed to testify. And I literally, Dana, heard the same question asked from the defense and the prosecution with different rulings. So if Juan Merchan says that he did this like he did every other case, then he's a bad judge in every other case, because the rulings were different depending on who did the objecting.
Yeah. So let me put this question to you, Professor Turley, because there seems to be a consensus among the three of you that there is plenty of potentially reversible error that was committed during the Trump trial. Yet in the New York court system, Trump has pretty much gotten locked out of all of his petitions to either have the case thrown out or delayed or sentencing delayed or whatever. What makes you believe that he could prevail on appeal, given his track record with the New York court system, which a lot of people believe is politically allied against him?
Well, very few people have high expectations at this point for the New York legal system, and it hurts me to say that because I've had a great respect for that system for many years, as has many others. But there's also a problem in these interlocutory appeals. They kept on taking these three-point shots mid-trial, shortly after the verdict. Those are always disfavored. And so the chances of prevailing are not high. You have a better chance once the case itself has been appealed, but also eventually this will go to the Supreme Court. And the key is escaping the vortex that is the...
Guys, let me tell you this. The amount that we are seeing of the craziness that is coming through our lawfare system, even people on the left that essentially have been Democrat. Now, they've renounced their their Democratic ways, but listen to this. Guys, this is Alan Dershowitz. If you don't know who he is, renowned professor, Democratic professor. Listen to what he says about this.
Experience. Have I ever heard a judge announce in advance what his sentence was going to be? What he announced is, my sentence will be no sentence. That got two justices to be able to say, well, you know, he's not going to jail, therefore we don't take the case. He should never have announced in advance what the sentence was going to be. By doing it, he was trying to influence the Supreme Court, and he apparently did influence two justices. Now, the good news for Trump is he has four justices who seem to think this case is worthy of review. All you need is 4 votes for certiorari. You need 5 votes to win the case, but all you need is 4 votes to have the case taken. So he will appeal. He will appeal to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will take the case. Once the case is taken on the merits, I think it will be reversed if lower courts don't already reverse the case. So this is an instance of judicial manipulation, game playing, Alice in Wonderland justice by Judge Marchant. He had one goal. He wants to have one of those trophies, you know, hunters have, which have the animal that they killed hanging from their living room. He wanted a trophy with the head of Donald Trump that can be shown on it to everybody, all of his friends. He's the guy who sent Donald Trump into the status of being a convicted felon. I have some news. I will never call Donald Trump a convicted felon any more than I would have called a civil rights worker who was convicted of spitting on the street in the South when I was part of the demonstrations down there, a convicted felon. He is a convicted, innocent man, a convictedly framed up man. Nobody should call him a convicted felon because that plays into the hands of the get Trump mentality that is destroying our legal system. And Marchant has contributed greatly to the destruction of our legal system, as has the District Attorney of New York.
Guys, let me tell you this. I'm glad of what's happening. Not only that people are seeing this, they're acknowledging it. Not only are we having Tulsi Gabbard, Pam Bondi, everybody's working behind the scenes to go ahead and start making changes over a lot of this crazy lawfare stuff to really make sure that the criminals are put in jail. Becky Gavon, thank you so much for the super chat. Let's go. B1 Sly One, thank you for the super chat. Said, chat, unsure if your hair is real. We want the truth. It's a wig, guys. What do y'all think? Does it look pretty real? Appreciate y'all so much. Y'all show B1 Sly One and Becky some love in the chat. I wanted to show you this real quick, guys. Report came breaking out. Legislation has been introduced to abolish federal income payroll, estate, and gift taxes and replace them with the national consumption tax on new goods and services by Representative Buddy Carter. I've never heard of this guy. Maybe you have. But this is the actual post of what would happen. He's calling it a Fair Tax Act of 2025. So, you know, like, look, guys, regardless of whether you agree with it or not, like, almost 50% of the United States doesn't pay income taxes. The poor don't pay income taxes. I think if you make under $40,000 or $50,000 per year, you basically get enough deductions where you don't pay any taxes into the United States. And I think it's like the top 10%, the people that make the top 10% of money in the United States pay like 80% of all the taxes that come into the United States. I'll show you the charts, but the thing about it is that they keep saying make the rich pay their fair share. They do. They literally pay for the majority of taxes. But what he's trying to introduce, and let me know if you agree with this or not, is to abolish the federal income tax, payroll tax, estate, and gift taxes, replace them with a 23% national sales tax on new goods and services. Eliminate the Internal Revenue Service. No more IRS, just 23% across the board. So if you buy something for $1, it's $1.23 now. If you buy something for $100, it's $123 now, but it's all based upon how much you purchase. So you don't purchase a lot, you don't get taxed a lot. No income tax, no payroll tax. Do y'all realize how much more money this would put in for, say, a family that makes $80,000 to $100,000? I think the average income household, I think, is like $76,000 in the United States right now because two incomes, in the house. Which, guys, that's not a lot. You have two people making $38,000 a year in a household. That's $76,000 for two people. Out of that $76,000, the businesses pay 7.25 per. I think it's like right at 7% for payroll taxes. You pay 7% of payroll taxes for Social Security, Medicare, and all that stuff. And then you also pay federal income taxes, which is an additional 10 to 20% on average. So it would save a lot of money, but it would actually spread everything really, really clean and fair across the board. Tell me what your thoughts are. We want to say thank you to everybody who's watching. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button so I can take care of you with the top news every single day, Monday through Friday, 2 shows a day, one on Saturday, one on Sunday. And if you don't mind, click the thumbs up like button, guys, because when you do so, it makes everything go like this. Amazing fireworks for the channel, for the videos. It just helps them out so much, guys. We love you. Appreciate all of our members of the channel. I want to say thank you so much to all of you. And if you want to be a member, the link is in the description to join. And thank you so much to everybody that's given a super chat today. George Soto, Jeff Stark, Becky Gavon, John Reppy, B1 Sly One. Y'all show them some love in the chat, guys. Y'all have been amazing today. This has been a crazy, crazy show, but we're showing you the truth. We gave you the exact recordings from the courtroom. You're not going to find this on mainstream media, guys, because I haven't found anybody that has Judge Merchan's actual recording, but I got you. I love you, appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.